All right, guys. Hope you're having a great day. Here we go. Krusty's Waterbed Palace? Grover translated. It didn't sound like a place I'd ever go except in an emergency, but this definitely qualified. We burst through the doors, ran behind a waterbed, and ducked. A split second later, the gang kids ran past outside. I think we lost them, Grover panted. A voice behind us boomed. Lost who? We all jumped. Standing behind us was a guy who looked like a raptor in a leisure suit. He was at least 7 feet tall with absolutely no hair. He had gray, leathery skin, thick-lidded eyes, and a cold reptilian smile. He moved towards us slowly, but I got the feeling he could move fast if he needed to. His suit might have come from the Lotus Casino. It belonged back in the 70s big time. The shirt was silk paisley, unbuttoned halfway down his hairless chest. The lapels on his velvet jacket were as white as landing strips. The silver chains around his neck, I couldn't even count them. I'm Krusty, he said, with a tar yellow smile. I resisted the urge to say, yeah, you are. Sorry to barge in, I told him. We're just, browsing. You mean hiding from those no-good kids? He grumbled. They hang around here every night. I get a lot of people in here thanks to them. Say, you want to look at a waterbed? I was about to say no thanks when he put a huge paw on my shoulder and steered me deeper into the showroom. There was every kind of waterbed you can imagine. Different kinds of wood, different patterns of sheets, queen size, king size, emperor of the universe size. This is my most popular model. Krusty spread his hands proudly over a bed covered with black satin sheets with built-in lava lamps on the headboard. The mattress vibrated so it looked like an oil-flavored jello. Million hand massage, Krusty told us. Go on and try it out. Shoot, take a nap. I don't care. No business today anyway. I said, I don't think. Million hand massage, Grover cried and dove in. Oh, you guys, this is cool. Rusty said, stroking his leathery chin. Almost. Almost what? I asked. He looked at Annabeth. Do me a favor and try this one over here, honey. It might fit. Annabeth said, But what? He patted her head reassuringly on her shoulder and led her to the Safari Deluxe model with teakwood lions carved into the frame, and a leopard-patterned comforter. When Annabeth didn't lie down, Krusty pushed her. Hey! She protested. Krusty snapped his fingers. Ergo! Rope sprang from the sides of the bed, lashing around Annabeth, holding her to the mattress. When Grover tried to get up, but ropes sprang from the black satin bed too, and lashed him down. Not cool! He yelled, his voice vibrating from the million-hand massage. Not cool at all! The giant looked at Annabeth, then turned towards me and grinned. Almost, darn it! I tried to step away, but his hand shot out and clamped around the back of my neck. Whoa, kid, don't worry. We'll find you one in a second. Let my friends go! Oh, sure I will, but I gotta make sure them fit first. What do you mean? All the beds are exactly 6 feet, you see. Your friends are too short. Gotta make 'em fit. Annabeth and Grover kept struggling. Can't stand imperfect measurements, Krusty muttered. Ergo! A new set of ropes leaped out of the top and bottom of the bed, wrapping around Grover and Annabeth's ankles, then around their armpits. The rope started tightening, pulling my friends from both ends. Don't worry, Krusty told me. These are stretching jobs. Maybe 3 extra inches on their spines. They might even live. Why don't we find a bed for you, huh? Percy! Grover yelled. My mind was racing. I knew I couldn't take on this giant waterbed salesman alone. He would snap my neck before I ever got my sword out. Your real name's not Krusty, is it? Legally, it's Prostacrus, he admitted. The stretcher, I said. I remembered the story. The giant who tried to kill Theseus with excessive hospitality on his way to Athens. Yeah, the salesman said, but who can pronounce Procretius? Bad for business. No, Krusty. Anybody can say that. You're right, it's not It's got a good ring to it. His eyes lit up. You think so? Oh, absolutely, I said. And the workmanship on those beds, fabulous. He grinned hugely, but his fingers didn't loosen around my neck. I can tell my customers that every time. Nobody bothers to look at the workmanship. How many built-in lava lamp headboards have you seen? Not too many. That's right. Percy! Annabeth yelled. What are you doing? Don't mind her, I told Procrates. She's impossible. The giant laughed. All my customers are. Never 6 feet exactly. So inconsiderate. And then they complain about the fitting. What do you do if they're longer than 6 feet? Oh, that happens all the time. It's a simple fix. He let go of my neck, but before I could react, he reached behind a nearby sales desk and brought out a huge, double-bladed brass axe. He said, I just send to the subject as best I can and lop off whatever hangs off the end. Ah, I said, swallowing hard. Sensible. I'm so glad to come across an intelligent customer. The ropes were really stretching my friends now. Annabeth was turning pale. Grover made gurgling sounds like a strangled goose. So crusty, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I glanced at the sales tag on the Valentine's Day-shaped honeymoon special. Does this one really have dynamic stabilizers to stop wave motion? Absolutely, try it out. Yeah, maybe I will. But would it work even for a big guy like you? No waves at all? Guaranteed. No way. Way. Show me. He sat down eagerly on the bed and patted the mattress. No waves, see? I snapped my fingers. Ergo! Ropes lashed around Krusty and flattened him against the mattress. Hey! He yelled. Centered him just right, I said. The ropes readjusted themselves at my command. Krusty's whole head stuck out the top. His feet were stuck out the bottom. No, he said. Wait, this is just a demo. I uncapped Riptide. A few simple adjustments. I had no qualms about what I was about to do. If Krusty were a human, I couldn't hurt him anyway. If he was a monster, he deserved to turn into dust for a while. You drive a hard bargain, he told me. I'll give you 30% off selected floor models. I think I'll start with the top. I raised my sword. No money down, no interest for 6 months. I swung the sword. Krusty stopped making offers. I cut the ropes on the other beds. Annabeth and Grover got to their feet, groaning and wincing and cursing me a lot. You look taller, I said. Very funny, Annabeth said. Be faster next time. I looked at the bulletin board behind Krusty's sales desk. There was an advertisement for Hermes's delivery service and another for all-new compendium of L.A. area monsters, the only monstrous yellow pages you'll ever need. Under that, a bright orange flyer for the DOA recording studios, offering commissions for hero souls. We're always looking for new talent. DOA's address was right underneath with a map. Come on, I told my friends. Give us a minute, Grover complained. We're almost stretched to death. Then you're ready for the underworld, I said. It's only a block from here. Chapter 18. Annabeth Does Obedience School. We stood in the shadows of Valencia Boulevard, looking up at gold letters etched in the black marble. DOA Recording Studios. Underneath, stenciled on the glass doors, no solicitors, no loitering, no living. It was almost midnight, but the lobby was brightly lit and full of people. Behind the security desk sat a tough-looking guard with sunglasses and an earpiece. I turned to my friends. Okay, you remember the plan. The plan? Grover gulped. Yeah, I love the plan. Annabeth said, what happens if the plan doesn't work? Don't think negative. Right, she said. We're entering the land of the dead, and I shouldn't think negative. I took the pearls out of my pockets, the 3 milky spheres the Nereid had given me in Santa Monica. They didn't seem to like much of the backup in case something went wrong. Annabeth put her head on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Percy. You're right. We'll make it. It'll be fine. She gave Grover a nudge. Oh, right, he chimed. We got this so far. We'll find the master bolt and save your mom. No problem. I looked at them both, and I felt really grateful. Only a few minutes before, I'd almost lost them and stretched them to death on a deluxe waterbeds. Now they were trying to be brave for my sake, trying to make me feel better. I slipped the pearls back in my pocket. Let's whoop up some underworld butt. We walked inside the DOA lobby. Muzak played softly on the hidden speakers. The carpet and walls were steel gray. Pencil cactuses grew in the corners like skeleton hands. The furniture was black leather, and every seat was taken. There were people sitting on the couches, people standing up, people staring out the windows, or waiting for the elevator. Nobody moved, or talked, or did much of anything. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see them all fine. When I focused on any of them in particular, they started looking transparent. I could see right through their bodies. The security guard's desk was a raised podium, so we had to look up at him. He was a tall elegant with chocolate-colored skin and bleached blonde hair, like shaved military style. He wore tortoiseshell shades and a silk Italian suit that matched his hair. A black rose was pinned to his lapel under his civil name tag. I read the name tag, then I looked at him in bewilderment. Your name is Sharon? He leaned across the desk, and I couldn't see anything in his glasses except my own reflection, but his smile was sweet and cold like a python's right before it eats you. What a precious young lad. He had a strange accent, British, maybe, but also as he learned English as a second language. Tell me, mate, do I look like a centaur? No. Sir, he added smoothly. Sir, I said. He pinched his name tag and ran his fingers under the letters. Can you read this, mate? It says C-H-R-O-N. Say it with me. Charon. Charon. Amazing. Now, Mr. Charon. Mr. Charon, I said. Well done. He sat back. I hate being confused with that old horseman. Now, how may I help you, little dear ones? His question caught in my stomach like a fastball. I looked at Annabeth for support. We want to go to the underworld, she said. Charon's mouth twitched. Well, that's refreshing. It is, she said. Straightforward and honest, no screaming, though. There must be a mistake, Mr. Charon. He looked at us over. How did you die, then? I nudged Grover. I drowned in a bathtub. All three of you, Charon asked. We nodded. Big bathtub? Charon looked mildly impressed. I don't suppose you have coins for the passage. Normally with adults, you see, I could charge your American Express or add the ferry price to your last cable bill. But with children, alas, you're never prepared. Suppose you'll take a seat for a few centuries. Oh, but we have coins. I set 3 golden dramas out on the counter, part of the stash I'd found in Krusty's office desk. Well, now, Charon moistened his lip. Real dramas. Real golden drachmas. I haven't seen these in... He hovered his fingers greedily over the coins. We were so close. Then Charon looked at me. That cold stare behind the glasses seemed to bore a hole through my chest. Here now, he said. You couldn't read my name correctly. Are you dyslexic, lad? No, I said. I'm dead. Charon leaned forward and took a sniff. You're not dead. I should have known. You're a godling. We have to get to the underworld, I insisted. Charon made a growling sound deep in his throat. Immediately all the people in the waiting room got up and started pacing, agitated, lighting cigarettes, running hands through their hair, checking their wristwatches. Leave while you can, Charon told us. I'll just take these and forget I saw you. He started to go for the